There are a few apps that I use every day to run my small business. Do you travel for work? Do you need to track your mileage at tax time so that you have a record of all the trips that you've taken that were business related? There's lots of good apps that will track them for you. The one that I use that I like the best is Quickbooks Self-employed. The reason that I prefer the self-employed version over the other versions is because the self-employed version does track mileage. It tracks them automatically. It syncs with your phone, so whenever you make a trip, it's going to automatically track those miles. And then at the end of the day, when you come home, you can open up the app and look at it, and you can just designate which were personal trips and which were business trips. And then at the end of the year, when it's time to do your taxes, you have a complete record of every trip that you've taken. But it does more than that. It also tracks all of your expenses from the bank accounts that you sync to it. So if you're keeping a separate bank account for your business, it's going to sync every expense that you have. So at tax time, if you do your own taxes, it'll sync with TurboTax. If you don't do your own taxes and you use an accountant, you can export all of these files to your accountant, and it makes it much more easy for them to finish up your taxes. And that way you don't miss out on any deductions. The other thing that I like about it is it also has reports. It'll generate a profit and loss statement. It'll tell you what your quarterly taxes are due. And there's a few other features. The main one that I use it for is tracking my business expenses and tracking my mileage. I've got two small businesses that I run from home, and one of them is an eBay reselling business. The second one is a dog walking business. Several of the apps I use for both, and you could really use for most small businesses. Time to Pet is an app that I use specifically for my dog walking business. And what it does is it allows me to be competitive with apps like Rover and Wag, where they're using tracking software and they're sending their customers a report card every time they have a walk. Time to Pet allows me to do that too. It allows me to schedule services, book the services, collect payments, send invoices. It allows me to sign electronic contracts with the customers and, things like photo releases and releases of liability, permission to get the dog's veterinarian care if I'm doing pet sitting, things like that. And then it also allows me to track reports so that I can see what my income is by customer year over year. And it also allows me to send report cards to the customers every time I have a service. So just like on Rover or Wag, where you tell the customers how many times their pet pottied or how many times it had water or food, it does all of that. It also has room for you to take photos and send those to the customers within that report card. It allows you to send notes. And it also has a GPS tracking on the app so that when you do take a walk, the customer can see where you went in the neighborhood and how far you went. It tracks the mileage. Most customers really enjoy that. They like the accountability. They like to be able to see what you've done and have some proof. The next couple apps that I use are free. The first one is Mint, and I've got my buddy with me, my little one with me today. He wanted to join me for this section. Is Mint. Mint is my budgeting app. I sync it with the bank accounts for the business. I use a different email address for each of the businesses so that I can keep their budgets separate. And I find that helps me really keep my numbers straight. When I was lumping all my business expenses together, even though it's a true representation, it wasn't really drilling down and telling me what each individual business was doing. And I've really liked it since I've separated it. The next app that I use on a regular basis is Canva, and most of you have probably already heard about Canva. Canva is a really nice, it's kind of like a photoshopping app. It allows you to make marketing materials. I've used it for my blog posts. I've used it for email marketing, thumbnails, banners. It takes your pictures to a next level, and it's free. I have the premium version just because I like some of the features on there, but I used the free version for a couple of years before I went to the premium version. The last main web page that I use, it's not really an app, so it's more of a web page that I use to run my dog walking business in particular, is my web page hosting. And I use Bluehost, and I have a WordPress web page. I started out on Weebly, and Weebly was a lot easier to set up. I had heard that, so I used that. But then when I started adding blogs to my web page, I had heard counter information that Weebly wasn't the best to start a blog on, and that WordPress was. So I recently, I've got my big dog. Come on. Come on. I've got my little lap dog here. No? Okay. You done? All right. So I recently redid my webpage to a WordPress webpage, and I had a heck of a time. If you don't plan on doing anything but having a place for your customers to find you, I would just stick to Weebly. If you want to do a blog, though, just start from WordPress from the beginning. I didn't know anything about setting up web pages. I've been basically feeling around in the dark trying to figure everything out, and I've had a hard time on WordPress. But Weebly was pretty easy. Either way, it's going to take you a little bit of time to familiarize yourself with that. But I do think that it's important to have a web page, even if it's if you keep it simpler, that's probably better. There's a few things that you're going to need. Just you're going to have to have a privacy policy. You're going to be collecting customers' private information, so you're going to need to have someplace to keep that secure. You're going to need to have terms of service listed. You'll need to have the, whatever you offer. Come on. So I have a web page, and it's on WordPress. It's under the same name as my business, which is Marisi Pet Care. And initially, I started it because I wanted a place for customers to be able to find my business, find the services that I offer. And then I thought, well, I'd like to write things that would help them have happier pets and healthier pets. And so I started writing little blogs. And I didn't know about SEOs. I didn't research, which topics would rank the best on Google or anything like that. I was just writing articles as dilemmas cropped up with my customers. I thought, well, surely they're not the only customer who has this problem. So I would write an article about it and try and help all my customers. When I had a customer swallow a meatball on a stick with their owner, not me, last year around Super Bowl time, I wrote about the dangers of meatballs on a stick. And when another customer got a urinary tract infection, or they were eating poo, or all kinds of things like that. Just, things come up, and I thought, I bet people wonder about that. I have been trying to work on my blog so to fine tune it so it appeals to more people and can bring value to more people. But I'm still very much a beginner on the blogging part. But if all you want is a web page to help your customers find you, Weebly's a perfectly fine place to start. It is more expensive, though. Bluehost was very inexpensive. It's very affordable. I think I pay $4.95 a month for the Bluehosting. It might have even been less than that. I may have paid for a year at a time and got it down to like $2.95. But I mean, it costs you almost nothing to have a web page. What adds up the price is all the plugins and all the extras. And if you add, from what I've heard, because I'm definitely no web page expert, but I've heard that a lot of those plugins slow down your site, and the slower it is, the less people want to hang out there. So that's something to keep in mind too. But if you know someone who could help you with a web page, and because you don't know anything about it, I would definitely go that route, because there's still a couple quirks on my web page that I don't know how to fix. I'm going to probably have to call Bluehost support and figure it out. One of them that's on there at the time of this filming is I've set up a privacy policy, and I've got a page for my privacy policy, but for some reason when you scroll all the way down on my services offered page, the privacy policy pops up there too. And the last time I was fooling with it, every time I would take the privacy policy off of that page, the privacy policy page would disappear too. And I spent so many days and so many hours on it, and I couldn't figure it out, and I just had it and I gave up. So it's still a work in progress. I've got a couple tweaks that I still need to make. I have had really good luck with Bluehost customer support, Every time I have been really frustrated with something, and it's usually because I just don't know what I'm doing. It's nothing wrong with the web page. When I have called them, the wait times have been really short, and they've been really helpful, and they've solved my problem. So, and I don't have a paid plan where they've got different levels where they'll help you for different dollar amounts. And I haven't signed up for any of that, and they've still been very helpful to me. Also, if there's any bloggers out there and you want to take a look at my blog, it's at mariecpetcare.com. And I would really appreciate any tips on it if you want to take a look at it and there's something that I'm doing that's really wrong or really right. I would really appreciate the comments. I'll go ahead and put links in the description for all of these different apps or web pages. And if I have any referral codes, I'll include those also, just in case you want to check them out or if you need to use them too.